Iran just handed back control of one of the most strategically important waterways in the world. No firefight, no casualties. The Navy showed up, turned ships around, and Iran blinked. The Dow jumped over 1,000 points. Crude oil dropped more than 10%, and Trump went on Truth Social to announce it like it was already over. Here's the thing, though. Headline came out today. Iran declares Strait of Hormuz open, but Trump says U.S. blockade still active. Both of those things are true simultaneously. Iran says they're open. The U.S. Navy is still there. The ceasefire expires in 5 days. What I want to do today is walk you through what actually happened, what it means, what's still unresolved, and why the next 120 hours are the most important in this entire standoff. Because the headline says Iran blinked, but the full story is more complicated than that. Let's start with the mechanics, because the blockade itself is genuinely remarkable, and it deserves to be understood.
In Iran, how copy, over.
Copy, sir. Thank you very much. Copy, sir. Me alter to Iran. Thank you.
President Trump also has announced a 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon.
That's the U.S. Navy enforcing the blockade in real time. A commercial ship redirected, no shots fired. CENTCOM confirmed 19 ships have turned around and 0 have slipped through.
Warships patrolling the Gulf of Oman in addition to the Strait of Hormuz and warning commercial traffic away from Iranian ports. You must get back. CENTCOM says 19 ships have now complied and 0 have slipped through. And this part is...
Here's the context that makes that number significant. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly a fifth of the world's total oil supply every single day. That's about 18 to 19 million barrels. When Iran started weaponizing the strait earlier this year, blocking commercial traffic, charging unofficial tolls, using sea mines to redirect ships through a narrow northern route, oil shot above $100 a barrel, markets were in chaos. The Navy didn't blockade the strait itself. That's an important distinction. The Pentagon was clear about this. They blockaded Iranian ports and coastline. Any ship heading in or out of Iran was turned around. That's narrower in scope than Trump's initial Truth Social post, which said the U.S. would blockade the strait itself. But in practice, the result was the same. Iran's economy got choked off.
So maybe if they can get to the table, there's a difference. They agree. They're going to get to the table with a pen. We'll have that over with.
President Trump crediting...
Pay attention to that phrase. That's not everything. That's not done. It's almost, and in a nuclear negotiation, the stuff left on the table is usually the hardest stuff.
We can do whatever we want. And it should be ending pretty soon. It was perfect.
Not perfect. The friendship with NATO. The president writes, now that the Hormuz...
That's the rally version. And politically, it's not wrong. The blockade is working. Iran is feeling it, and the market reaction proves the pressure is real. But the rally version skips the part about 440 kilograms of near-weapons-grade uranium sitting in underground tunnels that no independent inspector has been allowed to verify since February. It skips the part about the 2 Iranian negotiators at the table being Revolutionary Guard commanders, the people whose entire institutional purpose is to protect the regime from losing, not to help it make a genuine deal. And it skips the part about April 22nd. This is the part most news coverage breezes past because it requires some explaining, but it's the most important part of the whole story.
Home can see the Dow. It's up more than 1,000 points right now. We're inching back into that record territory that we had been in. And then crude oil, if my team will switch that. This is the part, General, that I want to talk to you about because the price is down for crude right now by 10%. It was hovering around $88 million a barrel, and $88 a barrel. And that is unbelievable because of where we've been. Why did this work so well and not a bullet fired?
Yeah, it's good.
Wires. Some explaining, but it's the most important part of the whole story. General Kellogg is being diplomatic when he says he doesn't trust them. Let me give you the harder numbers. Iran holds 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. 60%. Here's what that means in plain English. The JPOA, the Obama-era nuclear deal, allowed Iran to enrich uranium to 3.67%. That's fuel grade. Civilian use only, At 60%, you've done 99% of the chemical work needed to reach weapons grade, getting from 60 to 90% that. Takes about 2 weeks with the centrifuges Iran already has, and 440 kilograms at 60% is theoretically enough material for 10 nuclear weapons if fully enriched. The Arms Control Center calculated the separative work units, the technical measure of enrichment effort. Iran has completed 55,330 SWU. Getting from 60% to weapons grade requires just 564 more. That's 1% of the remaining work. Trump's B-2 strikes Operation Epic Fury damaged the facilities significantly, but the material itself is still there, still underground, still enriched. Material itself is still there, still underground, still enriched. And here's the part that makes all of this worse. On February 28th of this year, Iran kicked out every IAEA inspector, disabled every camera, removed every seal. The UN nuclear watchdog has been completely blind to Iran's nuclear program since that date. This is, and I want to be precise here, the most significant verification blackout in the history of IAEA Iran monitoring. We do not know what's happened to that stockpile since February. We don't know if it's moved. We don't know if there's covert enrichment happening somewhere else. When Trump says Iran has to give us back the nuclear dust, that's a real ask. But getting it requires knowing exactly where it is. And right now, nobody outside Iran knows where that material is.
The JICPOA, the Iran deal, to enrich uranium at 3.67%. We believe they've got to at least 60%, maybe 80%. You get to 80%, you're at weapons grade. But if you get to 60%, even Grossi, who leads the International Atomic Energy Agency, has said, you get to 60%, you can get about 10 nuclear weapons out of that. And that's what we don't want to have.
9 nuclear-armed countries on Earth right now. The US, Russia, China, France, UK, India, Pakistan, Israel, North Korea, every serious. Analyst agrees if Iran crosses that threshold, the Middle East changes permanently. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt have already signaled that if Iran gets a bomb, they want one too. That's the cascade nobody talks about. Here's one of the central sticking points. The US wants Iran to stop enriching uranium for 20 years. Iran has agreed to 5. That's a 15-year gap, and it's not a technicality. 5 years gets you to 2031. Every presidential election cycle through 2040 would inherit an active nuclear countdown. The U.S. position is designed to outlast the current regime. Iran's position is designed to preserve the option to restart the second negotiations conclude.
This week joined Senator Sanders in voting to block U.S. arms sales to Israel. And here's what it says. For all the Democrats' talk of preserving U.S. alliances from President Trump's recklessness, that never seems to apply to Israel. Instead, they want to punish Israel for working with the U.S. and Iran, which they see through partisan eyes as working with Mr. Trump. The votes to cut off arms in the middle of a war is an ominous turn that will encourage Iran, Hezbollah, and their terrorist allies around the Middle East. Your reaction to that?
Well, you remember back in the day,
the option to restart the second negotiations conclude. The general is being colorful, but the editorial he's reacting to is pointing at something real. This week, 40 of the 47 Senate Democrats voted to block arms sales to Israel, not the progressive fringe 40 out of 47. The WSJ's argument in Kellogg's is that cutting arms to a key ally in the middle of an active war sends a signal to Iran that American support is fracturing, that it's worth waiting out. Worth stalling, because domestic political pressure in the U.S. will eventually do Iran's work for them. Now there's a counter-argument. The senators who voted yes said this: we cannot support a war without a clear strategy or goal. Mark Kelly's exact words. That's not a fringe position. That's a centrist Democrat making a sober argument about strategic coherence. Both of these things can be true simultaneously. The U.S. needs to keep pressure on Iran, and the current strategy lacks a clear endgame that anyone's been willing to articulate publicly.
we need a new defensive alignment. You know, I think that 32 nations in NATO is unwieldy. So I think we kind of have to go back to the drawing board. You know, it's going to be kind of hard to tell my brother in California that we're going to defend New York City from Albania because Albania got hit or something like that. And I think it's time we do that. In the restrictions in NATO, in the NATO treaty, under Article 13, you can give a year's notice that we're out of it. And we can either say we're out of it or we're going to fix it. Let's fix it. I think we need to reorganize, reset the defensive alignment for Europe as well. But the president's right about that as well. Some of those nations out there have
A retired lieutenant general just said the quiet part out loud on cable news. NATO, in its current form, may not survive this administration intact. And he's not talking about pulling out of Europe. He's talking about restructuring the entire alliance, kicking out nations that don't carry their weight, and redesigning who defends. What? That's a genuinely radical proposal by any historical standard. 5 years ago, it would have been unthinkable coming from someone with Kellogg's background. Trump's own reaction to NATO during this crisis? He told them to stay away unless they wanted to fill their ships with oil. That's not diplomatic language. That's contempt. Whether you think that contempt is justified or reckless depends a lot on your politics. But the fact that a former national security advisor is now publicly floating Article 13 as a real option means the conversation is no longer theoretical.
Can see the Dow. It's up more than 1,000 points right now. We're inching back into that record territory that we had been in. And then crude oil, if my team will switch that. This is the part, General, that I want to talk to you about, because the price is down for crude right now by 10%. It was hovering around $88 million a barrel, and $88 a barrel. And that is unbelievable because of where we've been. Why did this work so well and not a bullet fired?
Yeah, it's good.
Advisor is now publicly floating Article 13 as a real option means the conversation is no longer theoretical. Let's talk about this in terms that actually matter outside a newsroom. For a family driving 2 cars, filling up twice a week, a sustained 10% drop in oil prices works out to roughly $200 to $300 per year in savings. That's real money, and it's the clearest argument the administration has for why this blockade strategy worked. The catch: it only works if a deal gets done. If the ceasefire expires Wednesday without an agreement, oil doesn't just go back to 100. It probably goes higher. Markets are priced on anticipation, and a deal collapse is priced in as a shock, not a reversion.
He says Lebanon will, quote unquote, take care of Hezbollah. And of course, that's the terror proxy army Iran pays, based in Lebanon. Trump adds both leaders may visit the White House within days. Lieutenant Colonel Keith Kellogg is coming up in focus with me. Let's begin with senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy.
2 years ago.
We have to be cautious about what we are doing, what we are signing, but hopefully we want to see Lebanon independent and Hezbollah and Iran out of Lebanon.
The Israelis may be skeptical right now, but a day in, the Iranian...
The Lebanon piece of this is underreported, and it's connected to everything else. Hezbollah is Iran's most capable proxy force. It's based in Lebanon, funded by Tehran, and it's been trading strikes with Israel throughout this entire war. A ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon sounds good on paper. But here's what the Israeli official is reacting to. 2 years ago, a similar deal collapsed. Hezbollah stayed armed, stayed embedded in southern Lebanon. The deal didn't stick because Hezbollah isn't a state actor you can negotiate into compliance. It's a paramilitary organization whose loyalty is to the Islamic Republic of Iran, not the Lebanese government. Trump says Lebanon will take care of Hezbollah. Lebanon has been trying to do that for 40 years, and the Lebanese armed forces don't have remotely the same firepower. So if the Iran deal includes stopping Israeli operations in Lebanon, but doesn't include disarming Hezbollah, which it almost certainly won't, Israel is being asked to stop hitting an enemy that's still fully armed and still receiving Iranian support. That's the Israeli skepticism, and it's not unreasonable. That's a direct quote from the president, not a spokesperson, not a press release. The man himself said, if there's no extension and no deal, we drop bombs again. That's not a threat. That's a policy statement. And it means the next 96 hours are going to define a lot about what this war actually becomes. So where does all of this leave us? The blockade worked. That's real. Oil is down. Markets are up. Iran opened the strait, and there's genuine diplomatic momentum. Trump himself said he believes a final agreement is within reach. But here are 4 specific things to watch over the next few days that will tell you whether this is a real deal or a delay. Here's the honest summary. Trump pulled off something that very few people thought was possible without a direct military confrontation. He used economic and naval pressure to force Iran's hand on the strait. The markets believe it. The oil price believes it. Even NATO, which Trump openly mocked, was calling to ask if we needed help, but the nuclear problem hasn't been solved. It's been paused, and a paused nuclear problem with a 5-year window and no IAEA access isn't a solved nuclear problem. It's a deferred one. The next deal, if it happens, will matter more than the blockade did, because the blockade controlled shipping lanes. The deal will have to control something that can fit in a canister the size of a scuba tank and be moved underground at night. Watch for the deal text. Watch for the IAEA language. Watch for April 22nd.